at Asbury Theological Seminary have had as one of our founding principles from the very beginning the idea that human beings can be holy. Is that really true, though? Many people in the world would say, no, it's not true. Yes, we can be holy in God's eyes, holy in the light of Jesus' sacrifice, His atonement for us. So God looks at us and considers us to be holy, but actually holy? No, not really. Well, I want to suggest to you today that it is possible for us to be actually holy. Now, what are we talking about with this word holy? In the ancient world, anything out of the ordinary or eerie or other was considered holy. So the gods were holy. But this concept did not have any consistent moral aspect to it. It couldn't. Good gods were holy, bad gods were holy. Clean gods were holy, unclean gods were holy. All it meant was you were other. It is other than ordinary, common life. But a created thing could be given to a god. And when that happened, the thing given becomes holy. So, for instance, if you give a pot to the temple, that pot now is holy. What does that mean? It cannot be used for anything other than the God's purposes. So that's one basic meaning of holy, to belong exclusively to a deity and to be used for his or her purposes only. A second factor is that when a thing became holy to a god, it took on that god's character. So, if a woman was dedicated to a fertility goddess, she is necessarily promiscuous because the fertility goddesses were promiscuous. She doesn't have the choice of being chaste. She will be like her god. So, that's the background to this thing. Now, what about us being holy? First of all, notice that it is commanded in both Testaments. One example, Leviticus 19. You must be holy, for I am holy. You belong to me. You must be holy. 1 Peter chapter 1. You must be holy, for I am holy. Oh, okay. All right. We've got it then. If we're going to belong to God, we've got to belong to Him exclusively and not be used for any other thing. Yes. Even that far, how many Christians are willing to be holy? How many people, how many Christians are willing to belong to Him exclusively? That's why Paul can call the Corinthians holy ones, saints. I don't know about you, but I remember when I was first reading Corinthians and I thought, these people saints? Surely not. Well, Paul is saying, look, when you accepted Christ, you gave yourself to Him. You now belong to Him, and you can only be used for His purposes. So at the minimum, we Christians ought to be living there. I belong to God, and I'll live for Him, and I'll live for His purposes, and nothing else. But it's more than that. Because both in Leviticus and in 1 Peter, what follows next, you must be holy, for I am holy, is a series of ethical commandments. Here's how you need to live. You need to live in these ways. You need to do these things. Now, have you ever thought about this? A commandment assumes that it's possible to fulfill the commandment. If somebody jumps off a tall building, and as they're passing by, I shout out to them, "Don't hit the bottom," That's crazy. They can't help but hit the bottom. There's no point in commanding them to do something they can't help but do. So if God says, you must be holy as I am holy, and then lists a series of ethical requirements, He must think that it's possible for that to happen. And so you find it again and again in the New Testament. There is a potential planted in every person who accepts Christ. There is a holiness that is theirs at that moment. You belong exclusively to God. But there's a potential for living God's life. In every one of Paul's letters, it took me a long time to recognize this, but in every one of Paul's letters, in various ways, he is saying, now you need to bring that potential to reality. It's there. You are holy, and you can be holy. How, Paul? Well, in Colossians he says, die. You're dead, potentially, when you accepted Christ. Now die. Die to those old ways. Die to yourself, to that fifth column inside that says, yes, I want God's way and I want my way. Die to it. In Thessalonians, he says, exercise faith. He's commended their faith, and now he says, I want to supply what's lacking in your faith. You can believe God to enable you to act like He acts. In Romans, he says, what you need to do is let the Spirit loose in you. He's in you. Now, let Him fill you. Let Him fill you up and live His life through you. That's what Jesus is talking about in His last discourse with His disciples in the upper room. I am the vine, you are the branches. And if you live in me, then my life will flow through you. What has to happen for that potential to be realized? A moment when I recognize my need, a moment when I believe in the provision of God, a moment when I hear His commandment and say, yes, I die to myself and I allow your Spirit to fill me. And in that context, we can be holy people.